I want to start this video off by sharing the YouTube comment that sparked the fire under my ass to make this video. If you play TF2 and enjoy the game, then I think this is something you should see. This is a comment that was left on Array7's video called, "Is TF2 becoming too competitive?" In this video, Array states his opinion that the future of TF2 is competitively oriented, to which this guy responds, "TF2 is comprised mainly of casual players, many of them, presently, seeking refuge from competitive rank grinding obsessed games. TF2 is sadly one of the last bastions of classic first-person shooters where you can just frag, hang out, and have a good time without needing to sweat over some artificial ranking. I really wish eCelebs would stop pushing the narrative that most TF2 players want it to be a hardcore competitive game when they are a hugely vocal minority. Official 6v6 is dead for a reason, and competitive TF2 on an esports level also doesn't really exist for good reasons. Competitive players can enjoy the game how they want to, but they have their own servers to play scrims, Highlander, 6v6, etc. on with their own bans and changes. Don't force those changes on the core game, which was made to be chaotic and casual by design." I 100% agree. The future of TF2 is not in the competitive arena, and it never will be. A vast majority of players have always enjoyed TF2 as a casual game. Organized competitive TF2 has been around for over 10 years, and despite its multiple avenues of advertisement and engagement, like eCeleb support or blog posts from Valve, in-game announcements, hell, even in-game changes based on competitive player input, the competitive scene has never grown larger than 5 to 10% of the active player base. It has always been a small minority. This idea of shifting the majority towards what the minority wants, i.e. bridging competitive and casual, is a good thing, or that competitive TF2 will save the game, is just wrong. Why? Changing a game that has always been casual and chaotic by design and pushing it towards a competitive format drives people away. It's not why players are here. Competitive TF2 only works by emplacing stricter rule sets and severely limiting in-game content. They do this via item whitelists, small map rotations, class limits, round timers, etc. Establishing harsher rules that water down the fun, chaotic, laid-back, yet semi-organized nature of TF2 into something that is simpler, really well-structured, repetitive, and predictable, which is required for a competitive game, would frankly kill TF2, because it would turn it into something that people don't want to play. The 5 to 10% of competitive players would be happy with changes like this, but simply expecting for everyone else to conform to those new rules and be happy with them, which is an argument made in Array's video, is simply unfair. Especially to those left of the number 3 on his scale. Balance changes should appeal to the majority, not the minority. Perhaps I'm misinterpreting something here, but I don't understand the logic behind first saying that a majority of players reside in the middle of this friendly to competitive spectrum, to then follow up by saying that most players should be content with residing here in order for the game to have a future? How does this make sense? TF2 has survived and thrived for over 14 years without being competitively oriented beyond that small minority of players. So how is competitive the solution for its longevity? That logic doesn't pan out. TF2's balance should be focused on maintaining what has made it successful over the past 14 years. What has made the game timeless and fun. A casual first-person shooter. TF2 is one of the last bastions of the casual FPS category. It should absolutely not be reoriented towards what modern FPS games try to achieve with their highly competitive oriented structures. This is not why most people are here. It's just like this guy said. TF2 is where you can frag, hang out, and have a great time without needing to worry about winning. You shouldn't have to need or worry about getting better at the game. It has been, and always should be, optional. And if players want that competitive nature, want to get better at the game so they can grow their skills and compete against other players to win, well, guess what? That's pretty much always been there in the Sixes and Highlander scene. Ah yes, of course, competitive players all bailed out for Overwatch and other games some years ago, but we all know how well that worked out for them. They're all back now and want TF2 to be something it isn't. Again. Competitively oriented players are indeed the loudest vocal minority of the TF2 player base. They have driven a lot of change over the past few major updates, and they hold a lot of influence. But when Valve listened to their input on balance changes, what did we get? We got items that were nerfed into the floor that were perfectly fine and wacky and casual, but not competitively viable because it didn't fit into a predictable, repetitive, and boring meta. We received a barely functioning matchmaking system that killed community servers. They got their 6v6 mode too. And when these competitive players got the changes they wanted, like in the Meet Your Match or Jungle Inferno updates, what did they do? They just fucking ignored them and went back to what they've been doing for the past decade. They went back to their own servers with their own rules and their own whitelists, and the majority of players that enjoy the game casually were left to pick up the fucking pieces.
Oh, Valve just needs to give competitive even more attention, or make even more changes so the game becomes more competitive. Then it will stick, right guys? It'll work this time, right?
TF2 will never be a fully viable esport as a whole intact game, and competitively oriented players need to stop expecting for that to happen. No amount of backing from Valve, advertisement, money pumped into it, what have you, can make the whole core game into an esport, unless you water it down into the 6v6 or Highlander format that only appeals to 5 to 10% of the player base. The idea of transforming TF2 into a more competitive format is by far the most dangerous and destructive idea floating around right now. Don't balance the game to appeal to a vocal minority that doesn't even play the base game as it is. Don't turn TF2 into something it isn't. TF2 is a casual, first-person shooter, and it always will be. That's why people are here. Keep this game for the 90% of players that want that casual experience. The one they were presented back in 2007, and the one everyone keeps coming back for in fucking 2021.